For most of human history, our biggest threats came from the outside. Asteroids, supervolcanoes, plagues. But then, in the 20th century, something changed. We became the threat. We became a risk to ourselves. We figured out how to harness the power of the atom, and in doing that, we created the ultimate self-destruct button. A piece of technology that could, literally in minutes, wipe out civilization as we know it. This is the story of how we engineered the end of the world.
Just try to imagine getting that call. 14 minutes. That's less time than it's going to take to get through this explainer. And in that tiny little window, one person has to make a decision that could end everything. Now, that's a fictional scenario, of course. But the terrifying part is, it's also real. It's a situation we've built for ourselves, a crisis that could unfold at any moment. So how in the world did we get here? How did we create the perfect tool for our own extinction? Well, the story doesn't start with a bang exactly. It starts with a flash of terrible, blinding light in the middle of a desert. Okay, so picture this. It's July 1945, out in the New Mexico desert. The first atomic bomb is detonated. And with that one massive blast, the atomic age began. The scientists behind it weren't even 100% sure it wouldn't ignite the entire atmosphere. It was truly the beginning of the precipice, the exact moment humanity gained the power to literally destroy its own planet. As you can imagine, an invention like that didn't stay secret for long. What came next was this absolutely terrifying global competition. It was a mad dash to build bigger, deadlier, and just plain more of these weapons. The Cold War quickly became a standoff, not between armies, but between two buttons on opposite sides of the world.
This timeline really shows our walk right up to the edge. In 1962, the entire world just held its breath during the Cuban Missile Crisis. By '86, the planet was just bristling with tens of thousands of nuclear weapons. It took decades of incredibly tense diplomacy and international pressure to even begin to roll this back. Treaties in the 90s, like START-I, finally started pulling us back from that peak. But here's the thing. Today, the danger is changing. We've got new hypersonic missiles that are almost impossible to track. New nuclear powers are emerging. And we're seeing the start of a new, maybe even more dangerous, arms race.
You have to try and wrap your head around this number, 70,000 nuclear weapons. It's a number so huge it's almost meaningless. It was enough firepower to destroy every single major city on Earth, many, many times over. It was literally an arsenal of planetary suicide.
Today, thanks to all those arms reduction treaties, that number is down to around 12,500. Now that sounds like a lot of progress, and it is. But let's be perfectly clear. This is still more than enough to trigger a global catastrophe and plunge the entire world into a nuclear winter that could kill billions. So how is all this destructive power actually managed? Well, the strategy is built on something they call the nuclear triad. First, you've got land-based missiles, ICBMs, tucked away in super-hardened silos. Then you have nuclear submarines hiding deep in the oceans. And finally, you have strategic bombers up in the air. The whole idea is that no matter how bad a first attack is, you can always strike back. It's the grim, cold logic of mutually assured destruction, or as it's appropriately known, MAD. So let's go back to that nightmare scenario. The call has been made, the missiles are in the air. This isn't a time for debate or for thinking things over. What kicks in is a horrifyingly efficient, almost completely automated sequence of events. And it's all designed to force a decision under the most insane pressure you can possibly imagine. An attack starts with what's called the boost phase. Satellites in space using infrared sensors detect the enormous heat from a missile launched almost instantly. Then comes the mid-course phase. Now the missile's in space, screaming along at 15,000 miles per hour, and it starts releasing its warheads along with thousands of decoys, things like inflatable balloons designed to totally confuse any defenses. And finally, the terminal phase. The warheads just plummet back to Earth at unbelievable speeds. And this right here shows you why a real defense is, well, it's basically impossible. An attacker can launch hundreds of warheads and thousands of decoys. And to make it even worse, they can detonate a few warheads way up in the atmosphere to create an electromagnetic pulse, an EMP, that just fries radar systems, blinding the defense. Our best interceptors have about a 55% success rate, and that's in carefully controlled tests. Against a real swarm, it is a losing game. Most of the bombs are getting through.
Okay, we're now just 5 minutes from impact. Think about the human element. The data is flooding in, but is it right? Could it be a computer glitch, a flock of geese? There is no time to be certain. A launch sequence from a silo takes about 5 minutes. If the order to fire back isn't given right now, the retaliatory missiles will be destroyed on the ground. It is the ultimate cognitive trap, and it's designed to remove human hesitation. The choice is simple and monstrous. Trust the machines and guarantee global war, or hesitate and be completely defenseless. The missiles reach their targets, the countdown is over, and the cold, technical prelude gives way to the raw, gut-wrenching horror of what a nuclear weapon actually does to a city and to the people in it. So at the very moment of detonation, a nuclear chain reaction unleashes a truly unimaginable amount of energy. It converts the weapon's core into a plasma fireball that's millions of degrees Celsius, as hot as the center of the sun. This isn't fire like we know it. It's pure, weaponized heat and light. Anything at ground zero isn't burned. It's instantly vaporized, turned into its constituent atoms. The destruction comes in waves, one after the other. First, there's the EMP, frying all the electronics. Then the fireball, which ignites these infernos that can merge into a single, city-swallowing firestorm. Then, that immense energy creates a wall of compressed air, a shockwave that expands faster than sound, leveling buildings and crushing everything for miles. And then finally comes the fallout. Radioactive debris sucked up into that mushroom cloud starts falling back to Earth as a toxic black rain, contaminating everything it touches for years. To really get the scale of this, just think about this. The bomb that destroyed Hiroshima had a yield of about 15 kilotons. A modern B-83 warhead, just one of thousands in the U.S. arsenal, has a yield of 1.2 megatons. That is 80 times more powerful. We're not talking about destroying a city anymore, we're talking about wiping it off the face of the Earth. And for anyone who somehow survives the initial blasts, the horror is only just beginning. The explosions, the fire, the radiation, that isn't even the worst part. Believe it or not, the deadliest consequence of a major nuclear war is actually yet to come.
Welcome to nuclear winter. Those massive firestorms that engulfed hundreds of cities create these colossal clouds of black soot. This soot gets lofted high up into the stratosphere, way above any rain that could wash it out, and from there, it spreads around the globe, forming a blanket that literally blocks sunlight from reaching the ground.
The effect is basically immediate: catastrophic climate change. Within weeks, global temperatures would plummet. Key farming regions, like the American Great Plains, could see summer temperatures drop by 20 degrees Celsius. That's almost 40 degrees Fahrenheit. The planet's bread baskets would suddenly be thrown into a deep freeze, even in the middle of July. It's simple, right? Our food eats the sun. Without sunlight and with everything frozen, growing seasons just collapse. A full-scale nuclear war could tank human calorie production by as much as 90%. Industrial agriculture, which depends on fuel and fertilizer and global supply chains, would just cease to exist.
And this, right here, leads to the most devastating conclusion of all. The greatest loss of life in a nuclear war won't come from the bombs themselves. It will come from starvation. Scientists estimate that in just the 2 years following a major nuclear exchange, over 5 billion people could starve to death. In many countries, only a tiny fraction of the population might survive. And look, this isn't science fiction. This is a scientifically modeled outcome of a war fought with weapons that we currently have that are aimed and ready to fire right now. The truly terrifying thing is how many times we've stumbled right up to the edge of this abyss already.
Back in 1962, during the Cuban Missile Crisis, a Soviet submarine was being hunted by U.S. destroyers, completely cut off from Moscow. 2 of its senior officers, who were convinced war had already started, voted to launch a nuclear torpedo. But the third, a man named Vasily Arkhipov, he refused. One man's dissent prevented World War III. Then, in 1983, a Soviet officer named Stanislav Petrov had a gut feeling. His early warning system was screaming that 5 U.S. missiles were on their way. He defied all protocol and reported it as a system malfunction, correctly guessing it was just sunlight glinting off some clouds. Even as recently as 1995, a Norwegian scientific rocket was mistaken for a U.S. missile, putting Russian forces on full alert. We weren't saved by flawless systems. We were saved by individual judgment, by gut feelings, and by sheer dumb luck.
We have engineered a world where a simple misunderstanding, a sensor error, or a single bad decision by one person can lead to the end of civilization. The power to unmake our world is real, and the systems that are supposed to control it are fragile. So the question that hangs over all of our heads is, can we continue to rely on just being lucky?